The AI for Good Global Summit, convened by ITU, recognizes the joint responsibility of governments, the private sector, United Nations agencies, academia and others to ensure AI reaches its full potential while preventing and mitigating harms.
And it's a moment that calls for action. And today I'm calling on each of you to use this summit to help the world to better understand what kinds of regulations, what kinds of guardrails we need to put in place right now. So together, let's make it innovative, let's make it safe, and let's make it responsible for all. Thank you very much.
Welcome to AI for Good, the leading action-oriented, global and inclusive United Nations platform on AI. Organized by ITU, in partnership with 40 UN sister organizations, and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of AI for Good is to identify practical applications of AI to advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and scale those solutions for global impact. In today's session, we're counting on you to use the live video wall feature to ask questions and post comments to help create an engaging discussion. We encourage you to stay until the end to chat, connect, ask questions, and network with our distinguished panelists and world-class AI experts in the neural network. It is now time to kick off the session and welcome our first speaker. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, passionate learners, welcome to a journey into the future of education. Today, we embark on a remarkable exploration in our webinar titled Innovating Education, Navigating Challenges in Open Source Generative AI Integration. As we gather here, we are poised at the intersection of technology and pedagogy, ready to unlock the transformative power of open source AI in education. Join us as we unravel the mysteries, confront the obstacles, and embrace the possibilities of integrating generative AI into our classrooms and beyond. Whether you're an educator, a researcher, a student, or simply curious about the future of learning, this event promises to enlighten and inspire. So sit back, open your minds, and let's embark on this exhilarating journey together. With this introduction, I would like to welcome our esteemed and distinguished panelists today. First, Dr. Fengshun Miaho, Chief Unit for Technology and AI in Education at UNESCO. Second, Mart Arrow, Expert Consultant in the United Nations in Education. Cristina Cardenas, Government Affairs Manager at Coursera. And finally, Serge Roberto Ciofo, Head of Experimentation at UNDP. Not to waste any further time, I would now like to give the floor to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Fengshun Miaho, so to give us an enlightening opening talk. Fengshun, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David, for the introduction. Dear distinguished participants, fellow speakers, it's my honor to be here to share what UNESCO is thinking and what UNESCO is doing in the field of AI in education. So I would like to highlight UNESCO's work in steering the human-centered use of generative AI in education, particularly. With this, actually, we have some definition on the human-centered approach to AI. I try to summarize all the keywords here. In a very simple way, we should use AI, design AI at the service of supporting human capacity building, and we should protect human rights, but also human agency. And we need to make AI explainable, human control, and human accountable. At the same time, in the education area, particularly, we would like to protect the cultural inclusion, linguistic diversity, and plural knowledge construction when we are using AI in teaching and learning. So with this, actually UNESCO started work as earlier as the first AI for Good Summit in 2017. And based on that, in 2019, UNESCO organized the International Conference on AI and Education. And we developed and adopted the first international consensus on AI and education. We call it Beijing Consensus. And since then, we have been organizing annual forum on AI and education for continuously for 4 years. And through these forums, we have reached more than 10,000 participants, less than ITU's AI for Good Summit, but in education area, this is the largest reach for the international forum. And from more than 120, almost all the member states of UNESCO, including 100 ministers. And based on this, we have been developing program in the key areas. First, we are focusing on the support from member states in the formation of AI and education policy. We have this Beijing Consensus. We also develop a guidance for policymakers on AI and education. And based on this guidance, we translate it into, make it available in 7 languages. And we organize the seminar for policymakers based on the local language, for example, Arabic, French, English, and Spanish as well. We have covered more than 50 countries. At the same time, we have been watching the AI trends and their implication for education. Based on UNESCO's recommendation on the ethics of AI, we also conduct multiple surveys to our member states on their use of AI education. And last year, we produced and released guidance for the generative AI education in September. And then we are now developing AI competency for school teachers, AI competency framework for school students as well. And we hope we will release in the middle of this year. And the latest date will be September of this year during the second Digital Learning Week. In 2023, we organized the Ministers' Roundtable on ChatGPT, generative AI, and we launched the Digital Learning Week, a new flagship annual event in the digital learning in education. And this year we will continue to have the second edition. At the same time, we are planning 5 to 6 seminars on AI competencies for teachers and for students. And we already released this guidance. At the same time, we are also developing a report on AI and the future of learning, just to show what we have achieved, and then also show some resources that the participants can download freely from UNESCO's website. We have 5 publications among the top 50 of all UNESCO's publications in the last 2 years. All UNESCO publication means the publication across all the sector, including education, but also science, culture, and communication. So we have 2 are within top 10. This guidance for generative AI education has been ranked number 1 for 4 months, and this one is also ranked number 10. And for the AI and education, we believe that all the countries need to develop some AI and education policy and strategy that should cover these areas, no exception. First of all the countries need to regulate not only the general AI, but the AI in education, especially the ethical issues relating to the use of AI in education in this field. And secondly, all the countries should prioritize the design and the use of AI for inclusion and for equity, including for people with special needs. And the third one, all the countries is very urgent to develop AI competency for teachers and for students as a cornerstone for the regulations of AI and also for the use of AI. And then to explore the pedagogical innovation of using AI to support the learning we want. And based on this, some key messages from this guidance. So first of all, I would like to share that we have to, especially myself, have been trying to use this model to analyze, to examine the use of the appropriateness of AI for different areas, especially for AI in education. So I call it human-machine collaboration. But within this model, I try to unpack what do we mean by human from the individual level, human interaction level, also the institutional level, and then at the state level, especially the government, sovereign state level, there's law, regulations, rules, and then also from the interaction between human and the environment and the ecosystem from the climate perspective. From the AI perspective, we should analyze the very, very critical technology points throughout the life cycle of AI system, especially from the production of and the storage of data, access and the control of data, and the data algorithm models architecture used to support different AI platform, AI solutions, especially the decisions that are recommended to human for the decision loops. And then what kind of devices, the AI devices, the hardware's interface we are producing. So if we use this model, we analyze AI education, we can unpack, for example, ChatGPT 3, we can unpack what are the data sources of ChatGPT. And then what are the language, of the data used to train this model? Whether this language covers the local language in the user's country or not, we can have an understanding. And then whether the model's architecture used in these tools are explainable or unexplainable. For example, ChatGPT, we largely believe that the models, the methods used are unexplainable. And then whether what this, for example, ChatGPT understand and what it cannot understand, we really need to define. We believe that generative AI does not understand the semantics of language, and also more importantly, does not understand values and does not understand the real world. And then from education, we also need to look at the trends, the challenge. And based on this, I think that generative AI is AI inside. It's a little bit different from AI before, and it could be a transformer across symbolic. It's a knowledge that is a kind of a technology that can produce content across symbolic representations of human thinking, and it become a supercharger for the literature review, and it can become a discriminator of the computational skills, but it's blended to the values and the real world. So we need to highlight human agency, human motivation, because AI will not provide the human motivation, and we need to make sure the human accountable discovery and human accountable high-order thinking, inquiry, especially the human interaction, and to protect human interaction. And also at the same time, it threatens the linguistic and cultural diversity. We need to protect them. And it's also posed a new threat for the security of digital learning infrastructure, in general, the digital infrastructure. And it's posing a significantly greater harm for environment and ecosystem. So with this, we summarize 8 controversies around generative AI, and we need to examine whether today's topic, open source AI, is a solution for that or not. I believe open source AI is not a panacea for the controversy we are summarizing. First of all, we believe that the generative AI is deepening, is really worsen the data deprivation, and also I call it a data poverty, or in general the digital poverty. To reduce this data divide, I summarize a kind of a taxonomy for reduce this AI divide, including the internet penetration. ITU has been monitoring literacy, affordability of internet, the use of data, and then different layers. I don't want to go through all the details, but it's very, very extremely urgent that all the government need to think how they should define the entire life cycle of the database productivity and how to govern this. Second, we reviewed that last year when we dropped this guidance. The rapid iteration of generative AI has been outpacing the adaptation of the local governance, the local regulations. We came up with this mapping, more like the roadmap, and we really mapped where we are, globally from different countries. For example, already how many countries really adopted the generative data protection law? 2/3. How many countries develop a national strategy on AI? After we published, 2 more countries come up with this strategy, altogether around 70 countries. How many countries really are regulating ethics of AI? Around 20 countries. And how many countries have been responding to generative AI? So far, only 3 economies: US, Europe, and China. So it's definitely is kind of, I call it, it's a tiered shortage of domestic regulations. And the third one, we all know that generative AI is using content without consent, because generative AI has been using our data since 2012, but without our consent. And there's already lawsuits come out. I don't need to explain. And the third, we believe that the generative AI, the models, the method used are unexplainable, meaning that even we find some, hallucination, but we cannot explain where it's from. And at the same time, the providers of generative AI are trying to keep their models not transparent. According to Stanford University's Foundation Model Transparency Index, you can see that the best one is 0.5%, 50% transparent. And then the fifth one is the AI generated content is polluting internet and is polluting the data that are being collected to train the next generation of generative AI. So we need to be very careful about this. The sixth one is that, as I said, generative, we believe that generative AI lack of understanding of the real world. And then it has many problems in terms of the errors in the output. From an education perspective, we need to think whether and how much it is appropriate for children's learning, especially for the young kids learning who don't have solid factual knowledge and conceptual knowledge in their subject. So we need to be very careful. Seventh is really, when we drafted it, we realized we tried to reveal that generative AI may threaten the plural opinion and the plural expression of opinion. We did not have very strong evidence, and after we published, we found a lot of evidence supporting this argument. The eighth one is that I call it the generative AI is generating deeper deep fakes because it's hidden deeper. And it's a low cost, almost zero cost, meaning that it's zero cost, zero prerequisite skills to produce the deepfake videos, not only the picture, not only the news, but also deepfake videos, especially for the pornographic videos. There's this data. And with this, we need to think what will be the strategy. First of all, governance, regulations. And we can see that we need to really like the European AI Act to have a categorization of risks. And then we also need to highlight accountability of all the duty bearers, of all the key players in this field, not only the providers of generative AI. And the third one for education system, institution need to validate the generative AI for education to ensure ethical issues, to ensure, most importantly, the curriculum relevance. I had a discussion with the Korean last year in September. They are thinking of using ChatGPT in their digital textbook, but they realize the relevance to their curriculum, the relevance to their language, Korean language, is very low, and they decided to develop a local EduGPT. And then, of course, the cultural and age appropriateness is also a big issue. In our guidance, we recommended that for the kids, independent use of generative AI without supervision. We're talking about independent use of the platform for chat without parents or teachers supervision. We put an age limitation. We think it should be 13 years old. According to another law, there should be 16 years old, but we recommend to consider 13 years old as a limitation. And then we need to protect teachers and student agencies. There are many countries come up with the guidelines. When I look at this guideline, even from the very developed country, I look at whether it's talking about the protection of human agency, the human motivation, and the intellectual development. If we find this country have not touched on this topic, I will believe the quality of this guidance is very poor, because it cannot realize the really serious problem about that. The second one is we need to develop AI competency for teachers and students. UNESCO has been developing AI competency framework for school teachers and for school students. We have the positioning of teachers in the AI era. We come up with the 2 dimensions. For teachers, we have 5 aspects: human-centered mindset of teachers, teachers' knowledge and practice on ethics of AI, AI foundation and applications for teacher, the teacher's use of AI for pedagogical activity, the use of teacher by teacher of AI for professional development. And we divide it into 3 levels: acquisition, deepening, and creation. And we are asking very fundamental questions. And for students, the similar, we have positioning of students in the AI era. We designed 4 aspects, 1 less than teachers, and 3 levels. So, but we highlight AI system design for students because likely many countries will set up AI as a subject. It may go very deep, so we touch on this topic. And based on this, we will launch this AI competition very likely in the Digital Learning Week in September. You're also welcome to join us in the first week of September in Paris, UNESCO headquarters. And in the guidance, we also strongly recommend that we should guide teachers, if possible, jointly instructional design or the use of generative AI. Don't just believe, 30 or 40, 50 tips or methods of using generative AI in classroom. Test them and do an instructional design. We propose this one. And so come back to the topic of today. I want to wrap up, but before that, I think we need to really consider whether and what's the problem behind open source AI and what open source AI can bring to us. We need to be very realistic. We need to, uncover what are behind open AI. Open AI is not something that's perfect waiting for us. If we find some evidence, for example, open source platform like very famous GitHub, even you search Wikipedia, it will tell you that it's already more or less purchased or controlled by Microsoft. I can see that by IT company. And then in the beginning, many people voluntarily launched some open source AI or generative AI development community. And then once they are growing, they become bigger. They will be acquired by the big company like Hugging Face, have been acquired by all the top AI companies. And we all know that open source AI may have lower security. And if we talk about the use of open source AI to develop local EduGPT, that's a kind of a dilemma or paradox. It means that you are using the education data, curriculum aligned data of students and teachers to train the GPT. But it will lose the advantage of the GPT that are trained on large scale of data, billions scale of data. So we need to, and there's some test found that some EduGPT, their functions, their capacities are much lower than the general large language model. So once again, if we use this model to analyze the open source generative AI, we may find we may be more knowledgeable and mindful of what will happen. For example, we still need to face, even you have open source AI, where's the data from? Data is not from nowhere. It does not mean that once you have open source AI, you will have the data. You still need to clone the data, collect the data. It's a big problem. Security of the data is a big problem. It could solve the problem of linguistic relevance and cultural relevance. And we still need to consider who will own the data. What's the data sovereignty of the countries where we are drawing the data from? And are we using content with the consent? Will we have the open source AI? I don't know. And I don't think once we use OpenAI, we will solve the problem of explainability. I don't think. And I think the capabilities of OpenAI source AI is as strong as the commercial AI. We also need to put a question mark. And it become less carbon emission? No. The more model we are training, the more energy we are consuming, the more carbon we are emitting to the globe, to the climate change. And then we need to think what will be the individual awareness of the open source and institutional validation of open source AI. Most importantly, for this topic of today, we need to think the government's accountability. The government need to have an incentive strategy for the use of open source AI, but at the same time, most importantly, the government need to think of the regulations of the open source based AI. It's different from individual. Individual, I can use the open source tools to configure tools for myself. I'm not selling it. I don't need the regulation from the government. But if some people, build a company, use open source AI to develop a product to sell to the market. It will become a commercial AI again. The government need to think how they can regulate them. And we really need to restrict our desire to try this AI, that AI, and then to pollute, our globe. We need to be careful. And I want to wrap up after, by asking a very fundamental question: what sort of human digital or human AI social contract we should build? What kind of relations we want to build? We are aiming at, and for that, what kind of AI should be designed? How we should use AI. With this, I conclude my presentation, and thank you for your time and attention. Back to you, David.
Thank you very much, Fengxian, for this overview presentation and very interesting model that captures, I guess, all of the issues at stake when using artificial intelligence for education services. I know you have a pretty tight schedule today, so I would like to encourage our panelists, if they have any questions on your particular presentation, to ask them now. And so just let us know if you have some. Mart, Serge, Christina, any questions from you on Mart? Yes, please unmute. Hello. And speak.
Thank you very much for this amazing intervention. I would ask this way that what do you think are the most important kind of building blocks that we need to start taking advantage of AI to support learning? Thank you.
I think to me there will be two. First, we really need to build the AI competency for teachers and for students, because most of them, especially teachers, do not understand. Because I have been leading the development of this AI competency framework for teachers. I navigate all the knowledge teacher really need to know. I realized that, and we also talked to many policymakers, ministers, and teachers, even the Teachers Association. We realized that it's urgently needed, because most of the teachers, because they don't know, they don't use it, or they use it in the wrong way. So that's the very important issue, is AI competence. The second one, we need to solve the problem of the education data that should be collected, managed, and used to train the models. So far there's no cross-border collection of education data. I think these two issues are very important, but of course relating to this is the regulations of ethics of AI. So I don't want to take much time, but just want to quickly respond by mentioning these two aspects.
Thank you, Fengxian and Mart. Any other questions from Serge and Maria? And Christina, sorry.
Well,
no question in my side. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, well, I have been working with several governments, and I would like to know if you are planning to work like with a particular government right now with the framework and any agenda that you have for artificial intelligence.
Fengxian?
I'm lost in the.
Fengxian, can you hear us? All right, so Christina, I think that Fengxian has a connection problem, so maybe we should move forward, and if he comes back, then we'll address your question. Sorry for that. So next in the pipe, so let's talk about your project, Serge, at UNDP. I would like to ask you, from your experience in your ongoing project in Cameroon, using AI for education, if you could elaborate on innovative ways in which open source AI can be used to address the global challenges of education, such as literacy, skills development, and educational infrastructures.
Okay, thank you, David, for giving me the floor. I'm very happy to be part of this panel. But let me start by saying that in 2019, UNDP launched the initiative of Accelerator Lab Network which is now one of the largest learning network on SDGs with 91 accelerator lab covering 115 countries around the world. And within this framework, one of the things that we are doing is to explore how emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, GIS, and so on can help to accelerate the achievement of SDGs. Now, coming back to the question on how open source AI can be used to address global challenges in education, I will say that open source AI has a great potential to address global education challenges by providing accessible and adaptable solutions. In fact, within UNDP Cameroon Accelerator Lab, we conduct last year a reflection published via a blog on how generative AI can contribute to improve the quality of education and research. And I will list about 5 innovative ways in which open source AI can be used to address global challenges in education. So firstly, in my opinion, open source AI can help personalize learning. I have, when people, if you take people in the rural area and people in the urban area, they have different experience. And we have to tailor knowledge and content regarding their experience, their environment. And I think open source AI can help in this aspect. Secondly, open source AI can contribute to language translation. This can help to translate educational content into several languages to facilitate access for all and overcome language barriers. In fact, in Cameroon, for instance, we have about 248 indigenous and regional language. And open source AI can help to translate content into those different languages for a better learning experience. Thirdly, I will say that open source AI can help to shape the creativities of students. Open source AI can help students generate new ideas to explore and build new hypotheses to test in line to address global challenges in a record time. For instance, to innovate, we need to be creative, and open source AI can really help with that. Fourthly, I will say that open source AI can contribute to skills development. It can help to create interactive learning platform that focus on developing specific skills such as coding, critical thinking, and problem solving. And this platform can use AI algorithm to assess student progress, identify area for improvement, and recommend a personalized learning path to improve their skills. For example, that study, which is a AI platform developed by a Cameroonian startup, today help students and professionals to learn new skills, share their content, but also to get answer to their question based on their context. Now, finally, what I will say is that open source AI tools can be employed to optimize educational infrastructure. These include scheduling classes, managing resources, and monitoring student performance. Open source AI algorithm can analyze data to identify and predict future need in order to help for better decision making. So overall, open source AI has a huge potential to contribute to the quality education by providing innovative solutions to address global challenges in literacy, skill development, and educational infrastructure. By leveraging the power of artificial intelligence technologies and open source collaboration, educator and policymaker can create a more inclusive, personalized, and efficient learning environment for students around the world. Now, but there are some challenges to use open source AI in education, like ethical and responsible use, like Dr. Miao mentioned. As artificial intelligence become prevalent in education, there is an emphasis on its responsible and ethical use to ensure that it benefits all students without discrimination and bias. In fact, you know, open source AI models can create bias based on the data they are trained on. In an educational context, this could lead to unfair outcome for certain group of students. So we need to pay attention on it because open source AI has a great potential to make an effective contribution to improving the quality of education around the world, and this must be done fairly. So that is my contribution for the topic, and thank you very much. Thank you once more.
Thank you very much, Serge. It's very interesting indeed. You are touching on points that were also raised by Fengxian indeed regarding the problem of data, opening the data and making sure of what training methods and data were used in developing such educational services. It was very interesting to discuss also the use cases to learn about your experiments ongoing with with the various ways that you are using generative AI, open source AI for this in your project, and the country in facilitating inclusive and equitable access to those services. I would like to now give the floor to Mart Aro, who's also very knowledgeable about the actual learning methods and problems with training data sets for gearing toward more accountable, responsible, and also explainable AI models. So Mart, would you elaborate on the potential challenges and opportunities in integrating AI into the existing educational technology ecosystems, particularly in terms of learning methodologies and quality of data used in AI training?
Thank you very much for this, and it was really a pleasure to hear the speakers before me. Actually, I had a question for Serge as well, but we can discuss it later regarding who should be taking lead in moving these topics ahead. But I prepared a very quick presentation as well to elaborate a little bit in details, and I will share my screen to show this. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay, excellent. So quickly looking at the future of learning and how we see it in Estonia and from an Estonian perspective, then what we are noticing is that we kind of see Lego blocks appearing, and meaning that if we think back to our childhood, then it's if you look at kids at the age of 5, they are very finding it very easy to decide what they would like to build out of Legos, and also how to achieve what they have had in mind in building. And now, if it comes to education, we see the same trend, actually. Children are very resourceful, actually adult learners as well, equally resourceful in finding the best ways of achieving their learning goals. And we need to empower them with finding the best methodologies and best approaches for their learning. And also to support the teachers in the best possible way in supporting the learners in their classroom. So how we see this happening in practice is that there's a lot of people that are building. So when I'm traveling across the world and speaking at conferences, then I see a lot of people that have amazing ideas of how to make something better about education, or how to develop a new methodology. And I chose just one example to make a quick case here as well, which is called Future Class. And this company was started by young people who established a VR center. And what they found in this VR center was that a lot of young people who were coming, the kids were coming there, and they like to play very practical games. And one of the practical games is called Job Simulator, which is literally doing some things that is exactly like doing an office work role, or setting up a garage to fulfill certain tasks. So learning in a VR context how a real work life looks like. This was the most popular game. And then they started to think that maybe we can use VR to make it even more focused on learning. And then they developed a system for learning chemistry. And I really found this very fascinating how it works. I'm showing a quick video here as well. So you can get assignments, what you have to do. And here we have to, the assignment is that we have to put together hydrogen to create new kind of chemical elements. And in VR, we can do this in a way that is not impossible to do in real life. So this is also shown by the research done on this concrete project in Italy, that the kids that were using this approach for learning said that 85% of the kids said it's more clear to them what chemistry means, and they would be super excited to use this approach more in their learning. So it's actually the same chemistry that we were all learning in schools, but no, totally in a new context that is understandable and more easy to grasp for the human mind. So, and now if you imagine these Lego blocks on the table being all different kinds of learning components or methodologies that I could use for designing my personal learning, maybe together with my teacher or a coach, then like, why isn't it already happening? And what I see happening is that we have all these amazing people, but mostly there is no good way for them to realize their ideas. So if you put it very bluntly, nobody cares that there's people that have amazing ideas of how to make education better. But innovation like this is happening in very small teams usually. So we need to empower, we need to look at the ecosystem, how we can start empowering these people that have these good ideas of how to make education better. And of course, there are many bottlenecks on the pathway. We need to look at different aspects of learning and how it makes sense in our countries, how it makes sense for our current economic situation, and so on and so forth. But if we map out these bottlenecks, we can imagine kind of a learning bazaar situation. And I really invite you with me on this journey for a moment. So who has been to a learning bazaar? Like, what what I feel when I'm entering into this environment is that when you have been in a spice bazaar, you enter this beautiful place where you see all these beautiful spices that enable you to start imagining and inspire you on how to make a really great dinner for yourself or your family and friends. But how a learning bazaar could learn from this is that instead of just going to school, we could have an environment. It could be a schoolhouse, it could be a building where you enter the door of the building and or the virtual environment, and straight away you are inspired by this beautiful and intriguing or interesting learning opportunities that kind of draw you towards them. So you're straight away getting curiosity to learn more about these things. And now is the place where the AI comes in. So for having this smooth and really nice experience for learners, we can imagine that there could be a much more sophisticated AI system in the background that helps us to connect with the most suitable learning opportunities that are there for me, considering my personal preferences and needs. And maybe also it becomes very clear when we start looking at the learners with special needs. So for example, we know that there's about 11% of people that have dyslexia. Today, it's very difficult for a teacher to recognize this kind of learners. But we don't even need to, the AI doesn't need to give a diagnosis to the learner. The AI could just look at the patterns of what way this learner is achieving learning outcomes better for this learner's sake, and make it easier to connect with the right learning methodologies and opportunities out there. And this could be a really amazing kind of helper for the teacher as well to kind of design this kind of personalized learning approach. And of course, I invite you to take lead in making this happen. So so we need to look at how can we empower people that have ideas of how to improve the education or some kind of learning methodologies or content. And I recommend, of course, the startup model. So we would see a lot of people that millions of teams created across the globe that are working on specific needs. For example, building a new methodology for supporting children with hyperactive disorder to learn multiplication table, like a very concrete challenge and a very concrete solution for this challenge. And in the end, we will see that the learning opportunities can massively improve in quality to the learners and, of course, to the teachers as well, supporting the teachers' work significantly. So if you're interested specifically in these topics, don't hesitate to get in touch. Happy to elaborate further as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mart. It's again very interesting to hear about your ideas and this analogy to Lego building blocks and gearing toward personalized curriculum, because indeed that's an area where AI could particularly make a significant impact. And that would, I guess, really support the more human-centered usage of AI. With all this, we've seen so many innovative usages and technologies appearing over the last couple of months and year. That, as was said previously, regulations are being outpaced worldwide. So this is actually a question that is of interest, and we talked about risks-based regulations, and in particular, the AI EU Act was mentioned. So I would like to now ask Christina to intervene and to let us know from her view and experience, how can governments and educational institutions can leverage open source AI to address workforce development needs and provide scalable, accessible, lifelong learning opportunities to their citizens, and how do regulations help with this?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with this conversation. And I also prepared some slides to illustrate what am I going to talk about. And first, I would like to, when I was preparing for my question, I was reflecting in my role in Coursera and who are those governments that we are talking, or these institutions that we are talking about. And I have been a policymaker before in my country, in Mexico. I was in charge to develop the skills of teachers and students in a country which has more than 25 million students and 1.5 million teachers. And I understand the challenge of adopting technology when you have diversity in the country. And when I arrived to Coursera, I was first trying to reach all the ministers of education to adopt this platform, Coursera for persons with autism. What it is, it's a cities and companies around the world, and we provide learning paths for students. And I'm in charge of constructing programs for government. So my first logic was going to the ministers of education to present Coursera and adapt and construct programs for their citizens. But then I start to realize that the ministers that actually are buying Coursera or adopting Coursera into their learning platforms are more ministers that have more flexibility to adapt. Ministers who are more willing to invest in reskilling and upskilling or cross-skilling because they understand that they need it for their business development, because they need to attract more income to the country. So I think that observing that data, it's very interesting because also over 70% of the people that use the platform of Coursera come by themselves, meaning that they are paying for using the platform, meaning also that maybe their countries or their ministers or the universities are not providing the skills that they need to develop. So this is a very interesting reflection to start of who are in the governments adopting these technologies, because this will be similar with the adoption of open source for artificial intelligence. Also, it's very interesting to observe that the average of that use Coursera are between 30 to 39 years old, meaning that we need a lot of support, not only for the basic levels of education, but also for the long learning experience. Also, when I was thinking about the answer, I reflect about, do all the governments have the same starting point for using artificial intelligence? It seems that we all have the same opportunities because open source is there, because artificial intelligence is there for most of all the people. But then when I start to reflect about that, I related with activity that I love to do, which is running. And by that, I start thinking about how much preparation we need to start a race. And I think that is the same challenging that the countries are facing. The countries are facing the challenge of being prepared before the race, meaning, do we have data for using artificial intelligence, which is the fuel of the artificial intelligence tools? So not only having data, but do we have it curated for use it? Do we have people trained in the government to use technology? And all these questions that similar to a race, you need to have before starting racing. And that's why I have seen when I'm visiting the countries. One of my main roles in Coursera is visiting ministers who are adopting technologies. And when I visit them and I try to understand who are the people who are going to deploy all this technology to their citizens in Latin America, I'm always questioning if they are going to be ready to do it, or if this is going to be a new technology that will create huge gaps between citizens. In Coursera, for example, we have 135 million users in the platform. 24 million are coming from Latin America and the Caribbean. And I have been seeing a lot of challenging adopting technology and adopting tools that are ready to use. So when I was thinking in the question about the open source tools, I was thinking if they are challenging using Coursera, which is a platform ready to use, how can they use open source? And of course, the benefits are huge, and that's why we need to start thinking more in who is going to do that huge deployment of technology in the governments. And then that brought me to the fact that we need to think in which are the tools that they need to have, which are the basic of the government's needs to start the use of open source, to use it in education. And some of the basic questions that came to my mind were the infrastructure and technology. We need to think if the countries have cloud. We need to know if the students that are going to use technology or the teachers who are going to teach with technology, for example, have the basic tools like computers, internet, and all what they need to start the program. We need also to think about the policy and regulation framework. Right? We need to think about, do we have the correct data? Does the data of the population that we are using is protected? And some other type of regulations that we need to have. And within the policy, do we are going to adapt it to a curriculum that it's going to be used for all the students, or in the workforce, for example, the ministers of labor have a policy that are going to be deployed to the students around the world, around their countries. The sustainability, there is no policy without budget. And normally, all the events that I attend, they are talking about the importance and the relevance to reskill, upskill, reskill the citizens. But most of the countries haven't allocated any budget for doing that. So it is very important that when we are thinking about who is going to do it, and the governments that are going to do it, they need to think about to have at least these three foundations for integrate artificial intelligence. Then we need to think more about how are we going to deliver. And that is something very important, because we can have a lot of tools, or we can have a lot of platforms, or we can have a lot of open source code that we can share to the citizens. But who is going to curate that content? And the content curation is to question more, not only that we have the artificial intelligence for the traditional activities that we used to do. So we need to think more for what do we want the artificial intelligence in education? Do we want it for teachers, for administrative activities? Do we want for students to personalize learning paths? Do we want to have coach 24 hours like we have been doing in Coursera? Do we have content for other purposes? So what is the question here is, why are we going to adapt artificial intelligence in education? And for doing that, we need someone who help teachers and students who will be the final users in education to select the tools for what are we going to have that code open for developing more applications of artificial intelligence in favor of embracing the upskilling learning paths that we need to have. Also, like, we need to think about the accessibility, like how are we going to bring these tools to be more inclusive for all the persons, like something that we should be care about, and that is also related to the curation of the content and the classification of the content, is that someone needs to supervise the codes that are going to be available. And of course, the evaluation and adaptation, like we all are learning. We are all in this race when we are not have to regulate something that we don't know if it's going to change next week. We have seen that the artificial intelligence tools appear and disappear all the time, and or improving the performance. So we need to think about how are we going to evaluate and adapt those tools. And I think that for me, the most important, because I think that the technology is here, it's more how are we going to deploy all this technology to the citizens, which are the final users. And I think that this one, it's very important, because I'm not sure if we are going to have enough time to train educators, for example, to use technology. In the past, when we were trying, for example, in the government of Mexico to teach students to learn English with technology, we realized that the teachers need more than 10 years to learn how to learn English and to use technology to teach. So how many years do we need now for teachers to understand how to use open code or open source, for example, to create tools for students or teachers or workforce to keep learning? So I think that in this moment, we need to think more about how are we going to teach, to train educators to face this race that we are all having with the artificial intelligence. And what are going to be those skills? I think that having the new changes of the technology make us think what are the skills that the students needs to have to be able to use technology. And we have all discussed that in the past, and I think it's related to critical thinking. We need to think about computational thinking and all these skills that we are not adapting in the governments, and not, at least not in the countries that I'm working. For example, in Latin America, not all the countries are adding this to their curriculum. So we need to be aware of that, because if not, even we are all having artificial intelligence tools, we are not be able to use it. Of course, we need to think about the ethical consideration and all the bias that can have. And we need to think globally, and we need to think also in collaboration. How can we integrate not only the government, but also the industry, and also like NGOs and international organizations? So we need to work all together. It's not only a task of the government to deploy the education in those days. I also found this a very interesting survey about how are using the open source tools for business. And I think it's not for education, but could be very related, because thinking as a former policymaker, I was thinking in how I will use open source when I was in the government, and what are the benefits and what are the challenges. And I think that one of the biggest challenges, for example, is to adapt to the activities that I'm doing daily, and who is going to support and maintain this, the open source. So I think that when we are thinking about adopting open source, we need to think a lot about who is ready to use it, to use all the benefits that, of course, I deeply believe in them. But I was thinking, for example, in the program of GovStack that the I2 has. Like, we have been recently participate in train a lot of women who are in the government to use open source to improve the government's services. And I think that I have thought about all what we need that the governments need to have in order to use open source in education. And I think that if I have to select one important source, I think it is the training, because the educators, the policymakers who understand how to use it will find the other tools that can complement that. For example, a person who understands the importance can find internet in one way or another, even the government doesn't provide it. But if the people don't understand what is artificial intelligence, if the government employees don't understand how to use it and the benefits and how to deploy it, it's going to be very hard to adopt. So that were my reflections when I tried to answer, thinking globally and based on my experience of how the governments can do to use these tools that we are going all to need in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cristina, for your intervention and the numbers that you could extract from your company and experience. It's very interesting indeed. We had a few comments online in reactions, but essentially they point to the underrepresented cultures and languages, and the difficulty of having AI models that are properly trained and personalized, so to recall Mart's word, to their cultural region. So how could, from your experience, perhaps Cristina or Serge maybe from your project, how could this be circumvented? How can we improve this, and especially with an open source AI standpoint?
David, could you answer the question? I didn't get you well.
So we've received a few comments online from the attendants, and a certain number of these comments point to the underrepresented cultures and languages in the actual training of the AI models. From your experience, how can we circumvent this and try to improve the situation for personalized AI for these cultures?
Okay, in my opinion, I think that we should try to see how to encourage maybe researchers, startup to develop open AI platform more adapt to some social and cultural environment, or to adapt also to the diversity that we have. Like the platform that I mentioned, that studies which have been developed by a Cameroonian, the answer is usually adapt to the context. If you ask a question, you will have answer more adapt to the social environment of Cameroon, and adapt to the cultural and so on. So I think we should encourage startup to develop open source AI platform, more adapt to the context, more adapt to the diversity that we have around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. Christina, do you want to react? Because you said something that I really liked. You said that actually using open source for these AI developments is a good shared and same starting points for the countries that are looking to embark in this journey. Could you also react to this question?
Yes, of course. Well, I think that the population that have less opportunity to, for example, invest in solutions that are ready to go because they don't adapt to the reality, they can use open source to tailor to their needs. And I repeat again, the most important is who is going to construct that solutions, because when we think about it, it's very interesting. And of course, when I, for example, was in the government, I would love to have something more ready for or tailored to my needs. But when I was thinking, and I understand the question is how can we do it, I always return to the point of we need to train employees in the government who are going to develop those tailored tools for the citizens that are particular taking care of their needs, because nobody more than the local government, for example, will understand the needs of those citizens, but those employees of the government may not know how to use those tools. So I think that open source can be a perfect solution because it's cheap, because it's ready to use, because the people who will use it will tailor to the particular needs that they have. But again, the most important to do it or to embrace the open source is to train the employees of the government. And I'm thinking about government because that is large scales in a country. You can, of course, think in other solutions from the private sector, but thinking in the government, if we want that the government adopt open source solutions of artificial intelligence to tailor to the needs of the citizens, we need to train them. And that if the employees of the government are trained and ready to use open source, I think that would be wonderful, because then we don't need to buy a standardized tool that is not for our needs. And I face it with Coursera many times, because Coursera has made for the United States population and tailor sometimes to our needs in the region. It's not that easy as if we will have a tool that will be, for example, ready for that particular needs. So I think that the solution again is training and training and training and training the employees of the government and training the citizens, and invite also the companies in the particular countries to use those tools to offer to the person.
Thank you very much, Christina. Mark, do you want to react, especially on the actual potential contribution of open source to these matters?
Always happy to comment. So I've been in education development for 20 plus years now, and I've been looking at many different approaches for, well, my question usually is how can we achieve good quality, as good quality as possible outcomes for the learners, and and educators, so they would be well supported. And I've looked at I don't know, hundreds of different approaches that we have seen all around. And so regarding AI in general, I think depending on the concrete situation, it's important for the people involved to choose the approach that is most appropriate for their concrete use case. And when it comes to open source AI opportunities, then there are case studies from history where open source has been creating a lot of value. I explained to you, David, the other day as well that, for example, MySQL has been a tremendous value in creating an environment for innovators to launch very cheaply databases. But saying that open source doesn't always mean cheap, because in some ways you need certain competencies to be able to use it in an appropriate way to guarantee the security, for example. So it still can mean that there are significant costs involved, and people, of course, deciding which approaches to take should be informed adequately of which is the most optimum approach that is creating the value that they need in their country or for their citizens. So that would be a super short intervention here.
Thank you very much, Mart. Short but efficient. Okay, so thank you very much to our esteemed and distinguished panelists for this very inspiring discussion. It was really interesting to uncover a number of issues and challenges related to the use of AI in education and to the potential contributions of open source. As far as I understand, to me, we've covered innovative education with a number of use cases where AI can help shape, support, foster creativity of our students. We've discussed human-centered AI, so not blinding to our values and our world, but personalized, and we geared toward a personalized curriculum, which is, I think, a very interesting outcome that AI could bring to education. We also touched on the sovereign states and the actual issues of having a good representation of underrepresented countries and regions and languages. We also discovered a number of risks, critical thinking being one because of using AI, sovereignty, and the AI divide. And we discussed a number of solutions, amongst which I noted competencies frameworks, because we need to train the trainers. So we need our educators, our governments, and we need those people to be trained and acquainted to AI technologies, methodologies, and actual data bias that may be introduced when training this. We also discussed opening that data and contents for training and using the proper Lego building blocks, the proper methodologies. We discussed the social contract with AI, which is also a very interesting area of research. And we touched on the regulations and talking about risks-based approaches to an outpacing technology. So with this, I would like to thank you very much for your contribution. You will be, as I said in the invitation, you will be extended an invitation to contribute to a case study paper that we will publish as the outcome of this webinar. This webinar has been co-organized by AI for Good and an interesting project on open source that we are running at ITU and together with UNDP under the funding of the European Commission, which is called the Open Source Ecosystem Enabler, which is actually looking to develop a full framework for training the trainers, but more largely speaking for public services in general, not only education, but the larger public sector. So with this, I would like to thank you one more time and invite you all for our next event, which will take place at the AI Global Summit in Geneva on the 30th and 31st of May this year. So we'll run a workshop on the 31st of May in the morning that will be dedicated to discussing digital public goods and services developments using open source. So you are all very welcome and invited to attend. And with this, I would like to give the floor to AI for Good for closing this webinar. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating in today's AI for Good session. We hope you've learned something new, innovative, and engaging in today's event. We now encourage you to continue the conversation on the live video wall in the neural network. Here you can ask questions, like and comment, share links, complete the poll, connect with interesting profiles, or speak one-on-one using the chat and video function. We invite you to explore the lobby, try the smart matching quiz, visit the virtual exhibits, poster boards, the e-shop, and build your personalized AI for Good program. Let's shape the future of AI for Good.
The AI for Good Global Summit, convened by ITU, recognizes the joint responsibility of governments, the private sector, United Nations agencies, academia, and others to ensure AI reaches its full potential while preventing and mitigating harms.
And it's a moment that calls for action. And today I'm calling on each of you to use this summit to help the world to better understand what kinds of regulations, what kinds of guardrails we need to put in place right now. So together, let's make it innovative, let's make it safe, and let's make it responsible for all. Thank you very much.